Chapter 5 is called Get in Line. Winter sunlight shone on metal helmets and jackets. It shone on broad belts, swords, daggers, spears, and red and gold painted shields. "No one's in here," said Annie. "Well, that's weird," said Jack. "We're lucky," said Annie. She grinned at him. "Finally, we can do what warriors do." "What? You mean we should try on their armor?" said Jack. Annie nodded. "Everything will be too big," said Jack. "Who cares?" said Annie. "No one will see us." "Right," Jack said nervously. He really wanted to try on the armor. Actually, it might not be too big. A Roman soldier had to be at least 5 feet 6 inches. That's only 5 inches taller than me, and about 8 inches taller than you. So if we... "Got it! Let's do it," said Annie. "Okay," said Jack. "Quick, before anybody shows up." Jack and Annie hurried through the wide entrance of the armory. They pulled off their capes and dropped them on the ground. "Where do we start?" said Annie. They looked around at shelves lined with body armor and helmets. In the center of the room were weapons and shields on wooden stands. "Upper body armor," said Jack. He crossed to a shelf with metal jackets. The jackets were made of overlapping strips of iron. "This one looks pretty small." He lifted the gray metal jacket off the shelf. "Whew, it is heavy." Annie held out her arms. Jack helped her with the armor, put the armor over her tunic. The jacket reached her knees. "Help," she said, nearly sinking to the floor. Jack laughed. "You look like a cartoon character," he said. "It's crazy heavy," said Annie. "You want to take it off?" said Jack. "Not yet," she said. "Put yours on." Jack chose one of the metal jackets for himself and slipped his arms into it. The metal was freezing cold. "Aw, man, how can warriors run or fight in this?" said Jack. "It weighs a ton." "And they march with really heavy packs on their backs too," said Annie. "And carry shields," said Jack. "Huge shields." "Unbelievable," said Annie. "Now, helmets," said Jack. He studied the row of helmets. He picked one for himself and lowered it onto his head. "Oh, man, at least another 15 pounds, he said. "Well, let me try one," said Annie. Jack picked a helmet for Annie and lowered it onto her head. "Help," she squeaked. "I can hardly see or hear." Annie's helmet partially covered her eyes, ears, cheeks, and mouth. Jack laughed. "I can hardly see either," he said, "but I feel braver wearing this stuff, don't you?" "No," said Annie. "I'm dying in here." Her voice was muffled. "Okay, let's take everything off," said Jack. Suddenly, voices and the sound of running feet came from outside. "Full armor! No packs!" a man shouted. "Emperor's parade begins at high noon." "Yikes," said Annie. "Get out of their way," Jack said in a panic. He pulled Annie into the shadows. Warriors poured into the armory. Jack recognized the cooks and craftsmen from the other day. "Mars the victor," Annie said. Her voice was muffled inside her helmet. "Quiet," Jack whispered. "Belts, helmets, shields!" someone bellowed. A stocky centurion stood at the entrance of the armory. "Oh no," thought Jack, "another centurion." "Double time!" the man roared. The warriors moved quickly down the shelves, gathering metal jackets, helmets, and military belts. "Everyone in line, now!" the centurion shouted. The warriors grabbed weapons and shields. The armory was filled with loud voices and clanking metal. "We have to get out of here," Jack said to Annie. "We can take everything off outside. Let's go." "I can't see," Annie said. "I'll lead you," Jack said. Jack took Annie's hand. Stumbling awkwardly in their heavy armor, they moved with the warriors toward the entrance. "Line up!" the centurion bellowed. "Single file!" The warriors almost knocked Jack and Annie over as they all spilled out into the bright sunlight. Chapter 6 is called Deserters. Jack pulled Annie to the side of the armory. "We'll stay here till they're gone," he said. Annie nodded. The warriors were joining a parade line. The line stretched all the way to the main road. "Prepare to march!" the centurion shouted. A horn sounded, and the warriors started jogging down the path. "Come on, let's get out of this stuff," Jack said to Annie, "before we get caught." Jack yanked off his helmet. He unlaced the metal jacket and pulled it off. "Whew," he said. He felt light enough to float through the air. "Help," said Annie. Her helmet was off, but she was struggling to get out of the metal jacket. "Hold on," said Jack. Jack helped Annie unlace the jacket and take it off. "Oh, there. Great," said Annie. "Now we better—" "Deserters!" someone shouted. Jack and Annie whirled around. In the distance, a centurion was pointing at them. "Oh, no! He must think we're soldiers trying to escape from the Legion," said Jack. "Deserters!" the centurion shouted again. "Get them!" "Time to go," said Jack. "Run!" said Annie. She and Jack ran in the opposite direction of the centurion and the parade line. They zigzagged between barracks until they came to the main road. At the far end of the road, warriors were lining up at the back gate. "The front gate!" called Jack. They charged up the main road, heading for the entrance of the camp. "Halt!" Jack looked back. Several horsemen were riding toward them. "Halt!" the lead horseman shouted again. And if you remember, halt means stop, yes. "Keep going," Jack shouted to Annie. "Double time." Jack and Annie ran as fast as they could. An arrow whizzed past them. "Stop!" Jack shouted to Annie. "Stop!" Annie stopped. "We have to explain," Jack said breathlessly. "Turn around and put your hands up." Holding up their hands, Jack and Annie turned to face the horsemen. The leader was a centurion. He wore a crested helmet and a red cape. "Mars the victor!" Jack yelled. "We're visiting scholars under the Imperial Guard. We come in peace." "Peace!" Annie shouted. "Peace! Pax!" The warriors on horseback circled them. Jack felt very small. The centurion leaned forward. "What tribe are you from?" he barked. Frog Creek," Jack blurted out. "Frog Creek," the centurion said. "There's no such tribe." "Perhaps they came across the river from the north," said the other warrior. "They're very small." "Did you cross the Danube?" the centurion asked. Actually, I don't know where Frog Creek is exactly in relation to your camp," said Jack, "but it's possibly, who told you the secret word of the day?" the centurion demanded. "A rider on a black horse," said Annie. "Where did you see him?" the man asked. "Outside the camp. He was alone." "Our warriors do not ride alone outside the camp. What did he tell you?" asked the centurion. Well, he told us to make notes about the Roman legion, and that's what we've been doing all day, taking notes," said Jack. "So a rider on a black horse gave you our secret daily password?" the centurion said. "Yes, sir," said Jack. "And he told you to write about our camp?" said the centurion. "Yes," said Jack. "And you don't know his name?" the centurion said. "He didn't tell us his name, but he must be here somewhere," said Annie. "He rode into the camp." "He is here? He rode into our camp?" The centurion turned to the other horseman. "An enemy spy is inside our walls," he roared. No, not an enemy," said Annie. "Not a spy." The horsemen ignored her, and all of them began yelling at once. "He is here! He rode into our camp! An enemy spy! Inside our walls! We must stop the parade!" the centurion roared. The horsemen stared at their leader. "Alert Emperor Aurelius!" One of the horsemen nodded and galloped off. "We will take these prisoners to the royal tent," said the centurion. "The emperor will decide their fate."